It is indubitably that time. Hey, I know it's been a while, but I, of course, had to take my time brewing in the kitchen, meticulously concocting a Sonic what if idea that everyone has thought of and wanted at some point. And that, of course, is what if Sonic was betrayed and trapped in the special zone, just like his fictional rival Goku. So today, prepare yourself for a timeline all about loss, revenge, hope, and acceptance of one's potential.
Oh, brother!
Today is the one-shot video of Sonic being trapped and betrayed in the special zone. Let the crashing out begin. Starting off this peak timeline after events of Sonic Forces, Sonic and Tails have had numerous adventures together over the years, fighting against Eggman and any other force of evil that's come after the Chaos Emeralds. Noting eventful times like when he first met the Hedgehog on West Side Island, collecting the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and even the direct adventures of Sonic Adventure 1 when he finally gained the confidence to save a city and go toe-to-toe with the evil Doctor. Nevertheless, after looking back though of all this destruction that's caused by all the battles between Sonic and Eggman, all the times where cities are destroyed, people's lives being at risk, the universe almost collapsing. When Sonic was captured by Eggman and the 6 months spent without any constant worlding in battles, wasn't it more peaceful that way? I mean, compared to what usually happened, were things better without Sonic around? Of course, the two-tailed fox would push such intrusive thoughts away from his mind. I mean, the blue blur was his best friend after all, and Sonic loved saving people. Him and his cool, arrogant, free-spirited nature, right? Wait, the same arrogant nature that let Eggman free so many times, just like in Unleash? Wait a minute, the same exact arrogant nature that just let Metal Sonic go after he literally took everyone's DNA and tried conquering the planet. Didn't they try killing them? And on top of all that, why did he always have to clean up after the Hedgehog's mess? Why wasn't he the hero? Why wasn't he the strongest? What originally began as just intrusive thoughts begins to be a belief for Tails. As anyone else he tries to confide his worries in, like Amy, Knuckles, or even the Chaotix, all reject such a possible notion, having spent way too many years with the Hedgehog to think like that and just conclude Tails just worrying, going back to his old scary tendencies. There was that one time where Tails did mention his worries to Big while he was fishing with Froggy, the obese individual surprisingly giving him a strong piece of advice of not giving up on friends, even with the same mistakes he did with Froggy when he got him lost in Adventure 1. But he still remained unconvinced. All of this is to say that it isn't long until the notorious villain of the series takes notice of these actions. Dr. Eggman decides to use this doubt as an opportunity, putting a pause to his plans for Frontiers and actually secretly meeting up with Tails in his workshop. Initially, the fox is hostile, but Eggman uses the same charisma he's used so many other times to trick other villains, convincing that Tails needed to listen. Now, if the two smartest people in the universe cooperating together, they ponder what place could they possibly put Sonic into. The special zone, of course. Eggman begins to state, a world without Sonic's chaos. You just have to help beat this once, Tails. Tails would barely convince himself at the end. Was this really for the greater good? For everyone's sake, right?
You're too slow!
A couple days later, we find ourselves at the familiar scene of the classic Sonic vs Eggman battle, with our undercover betrayer following via tornado with Amy in the backseat and Knuckles hanging on the side. Sonic would use the speed that he's known for and would jump over to spin dash tackle into the rebuilt Egg Dragoon, pushing the machine back easily into a wall in Green Hill Zone. Sonic quickly clips that the Doctor seemed to be losing his edge recently, at least compared to his usual antics. This was way too easy, even for him. Sonic looks back at the squad for support, Amy cheering with admiration as expected, while Knuckles just acknowledges with a nod, saying that I would have done better and less slop, with Sonic just shrugging back as a response, but especially being curious why Tails was so quiet lately. He didn't say any of his usual statistics statistics of danger like always. After the squad lands the plane near the wreckage, the cowardly doctor would get up from his predicament. The same overused apology, but I hope Doc you actually bring your A game next time. Dismissing away the doctor's apology, an underlying threat as always. But it was at this point Tails and Eggman's finally locked eyes to initiate their plan. Knuckles and Tails would all surround the Hedgehog to talk about what they were gonna do next, with Sonic saying if it wasn't for the Fox's tractor, he probably would have lost directions to where Eggman was going in the first place, especially with how abandoned looking this part of Green Hill looked anyway. Going in for a high five towards his best buddy, Sonic is surprised when his hand doesn't make contact with another hand, but a ring. You always let your confidence blind you, don't you, Sonic? Always let a Eggman go, huh? Tails, what's going on here? Suddenly, from where Eggman was standing, an evil cackling begins to emit from the rotund professor, as immediately a pink wormhole opens up beside him hollering, "Oh, poor Sonic. Gotten yourself in a pickle, haven't we?" Knuckles would dart his eyes to see that the ring in Sonic's hand was the exact same ring him and the Chaotix had to deal with a couple years back. Sonic was unable to let go of the ring as it was stuck on his hand, for everyone immediately seeing that the other ring was attached to the broken remains of the Egg Dragoon, as the robot in its broken state immediately started being consumed by the portal. Sonic terrifyingly says, "Tails, why?" Unable to believe that his closest friend could ever do such a thing, but it was already too late, as even with the horrified screams of Amy and Knuckles, the teleport sound effect has already been played, and the blue blur was gone, just like that. Amy would begin to weep, while Knuckles would dash forward, grabbing Tails by his neck and asking what did he just do, betraying Sonic? But before any more questions can be answered, he's swatted away, as Eggman in the getaway machine allows Tails some time to escape, as he quickly and panically pilots the tornado out of there, leaving his once friends alone. Eggman via communicator congratulates the Fox for doing such a great job, as Tails begins to feel sick to his stomach. Did he really do the right thing? Was he now the strongest? It wouldn't take long for the rest of the Sonic cast to find out about the news of Sonic's betrayal. Everyone was shocked that the blue blur was really gone, and Tails was the main contributor behind it. Without Tails or even Eggman's genius, there's seemingly no way to get him back from the special zone. Many were divided on the issue. Some people like Amy, Cream, and the others wanted to find Tails and exact revenge for what happened, while others like Knuckles were more curious to see why it happened in the first place, believing Eggman had some sort of influence over their two-tailed friend. Regardless of all bickering, there was only one noticeable figure that rose up to the occasion in a world without Sonic, and that was big. The rotund, obese, obsessively large, extremely robust, and overweight cat would uncharacteristically be a voice of reason for everyone during this crisis, actually pleading for Tails' case and for them to not give up on a friend so easily, even if they make a mistake. The cat began to plead that, "Guys, I have a dream that one day people aren't judged by how many rings they have, not by how many of them can achieve a super form, but are judged by the quality of their character." As Froggy croaks in agreement, everyone else being moved by such a good quote coming out of Big out of all people, the choice of words hitting Shadow the most. Suddenly though, a time rift occurs out of nowhere, where all of a sudden Silver the Hedgehog makes his appearance. Everyone questioned what he showed up for. I mean, some of them even forgot he existed in the first place. I mean, him never getting his own game, his own year, but enough of all that. Silver begins to say in the future that after beating Mephiles, the Sonic trapped in the special zone would return, seeking revenge, proving his original assumption right of maybe him not being the Iblis trigger, but a trigger of the iconic Sonic War that invaded and destroyed his home. And without Tails and his genius, the world was doomed. His psychic abilities weren't enough to go against all the enemies in his timeline, Silver personally noting that he in the future is a disciple of the future Big. Him and his rival have been trained by the long-living cat ever since the crisis began in his world. Truly being the symbol of peace, Big looks back at the future hedgehog approvingly. So then, who was Silver's rival? Everyone would turn around to see a kid standing behind Big, who began to speak up to the crowd. My name is Chris Thorndike, and I believe Big can save the world. Meanwhile, back in Tails' workshop, the guilt of leaving his best friend in such an unpredictable place like the Special Zone was starting to hit him. Was he just jealous? Why didn't he feel like he was the strongest now? Eggman had clearly used the Fox to get an upper hand on his blue rival, and now everything was falling apart and it was all his fault. He had to get Sonic back. He had to fix his mistakes no matter what. The young scientists would begin to research methods to bring Sonic, and it isn't long till Eggman himself begins to get concerns. The chaos energy readings he was getting for the past few days have been alarming, as if something was trying to force their way into their world. The villain went down to the laboratory, knowing he had to prepare soon for what was to come. So switching back perspective to the POV we're probably the most curious about, Sonic couldn't believe his eyes while floating in the endless space that is the Special Zone. Yeah, he's been in here a couple times before, but never for this long, the realm never having been made for a living person before. The remaining parts of the Egg Dragoon that Sonic was tethered to had drifted apart a long time ago, just leaving him alone with his thoughts as he began to slowly drift away from the conditions of the realm, bringing the Hedgehog all types of a hallucination, all of them targeting Sonic's biggest trait, his arrogance. Images of Eggman, Amy, Knuckles, Shadow all test his fortitude, all mocking him saying that he was never a hero. He deserved this. He can't ever beat Goku. He wasn't the fastest thing alive. What made the situation worse was all this constant running through all these different types of special stages was traumatizing, like the one where he has no control of his actions, gravity just shifting him at a whim, with him continually having to spin dash, or Blue Spear, where every time the Hedgehog touches a red circle he's forced to retry the same stage over and over and over. Who made this? The Half Pipe from Sonic Heroes. The Chaos Emerald always speeding up, the whole floor feeling like he was slipping on ice. Like, why was the momentum all over the place? How did he even get these Chaos Emeralds back then? What almost breaks Sonic though, is when he's forced to return to the hoverboard riding stages back in Sonic Advance. The gashing of teeth torture felt. Every time he aimed for the stream of rings, he would always miss them because of this terrible POV. Like, dog, look at this. An endless loop of horrible memories in the Special Zone until Sonic would meet someone else. Was that another version of him? Silkadoon drops down and makes his appearance. Apparently he's some sort of genetic evil clone of Sonic and Shadow, but who cares about that? Regardless, Silkadoon teleports to Sonic in his predicament, relating to a strange counterpart that he too was trapped in the Special Zone. But they weren't the only ones. Sonic originally hesitates but goes along with the creature, where soon enough he's met with a multitude of different versions of him that were also trapped and betrayed. A brotherhood of Sonics. After introducing themselves, Sonic will find out that all of them were all tricked and betrayed by someone they trusted in the past. Underground Sonic mentioning that his siblings were always jealous of his speed. EXE, who was just considering therapy after his atrocities in Cold Steel, the worst of all, just helping out old ladies across the road. With all the time they spent here and with all the close connection with the Emeralds, they could all turn super on command, but they just needed one more person to power up so they can forcefully break out this dimension. Silkadoon pointing out that he was their last hope of getting out of here, of the constant missing of rings back in Sonic Advance 1, and the fact that Sega always does what Nintendo don't. He joins the ranks for the decades of training to power up out of the Special Zone. Soon enough, Sonic also participating in the Sake of Brothership and begin to train as the leader of this other versions of himself. This, viewers, is the terrifying start of the The setting is all set. Chris Thorndike, Tails, and Eggman all collaborated together to create machines and contingencies for the upcoming conflict. Metal Sonic being brought back for the smoke. All of this while Big leads the forces of Team Dark, Chaotix, the Forgottens, and more for the eventual takeover. Shadow and Knuckles were banking on using the power of the Master Emerald to their advantage to counter Sonic's impending arrival. Tails was nervous, beyond any reasonable doubt. He knew he was going to be the main target, but he had to fix his mistakes. But first, the purple obesity warning himself stands in front to speak one last phrase of encouragement before the battle starts. My soldiers do not buckle. My soldiers push forward. My soldiers stand for my rival worm. Immediately, multiple portals were opening up all around the globe, with Sukkadum immediately showing its aura-like bravado, looking disgusted at his opposition, all while smirking because he was going to enjoy this. Everyone quickly uses their speed to fan out across different parts of the world to combat these evil versions of Sonic. Doom floats downward to face Big, knowing in order to kill the body of a snake, you always go for the head. Sonic in his own super form above Metropolis fighting Knuckles, haunting the echidna that he's glad he destroyed the rest of his race back where he came from. He would even fit as a slave in his own empire. Another shot of SuperSonic.exe punching the daylights out of Amy on some wife-beater activity, knowing that he's killed her before and he was going to kill her again, all while being broly dragged into Casino Night Zone. Now we find Tails, guarded up on the Cyclone preparing to fight for his life, when behind him he hears, "Do you remember me? Do you remember who I am? Sonic, do you think you're the strongest?" The yellow blur with one blur completely dismantles the Cyclone, then pushes Tails towards a wall, yelling, "I lost 30 years of my life because of you. You traitor, you're going to feel the real power of going fast." As immediately, the Super Hedgehog begins to power up, pushing the Hedgehog towards the pinnacle of potential. Super Sonic 3. Sonic, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking right. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was tired of all Tails. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how scared you are. I can run to the future. You don't have enough IQ to see tomorrow. Tails' fear now was on a whole nother level, staring down the red eyes of fury from out of the sky though. Metal Sonic makes his devious entrance, and because of plot, is able to immediately transform back into Metal Madness. Ready to show that he didn't care how much stronger he got. He was ready to crash out. Super Sonic 3 didn't care though, grinning mischievously as our main character breaks his limits to open a portal to the special zone, punching a hole through Metal Madness' structure and ending it with it.
You're too slow!
Using the distraction though, Chris had picked up Tails on the tornado. They needed to find Big fast. Back to the battle with Sukkadum, the guy was pretty confident. I mean, where he came from, he was able to beat two superpowered hedgehogs easily. What challenge could Big or his whack pet do? Said cat simply gives a nod, putting Froggy down to the ground. Even Silver, who would never question his past master, was unsure of this decision. It had to be of no use. Sukkadum prepares a key blast, ready to blast away the animal, but for some reason, he couldn't. The blast was gone, as Froggy was holding the key blast in his tongue, dispersing the energy. Sukkadum steps back in shock, as Bass, Froggy, and himself battle it out to be equals, both using chaos control, teleport, spin dashes. He was actively having a high-def fight with the frog. Big though would look up to see this disturbance of the world. All these Sonics, all these terrible ideas shouldn't be in one universe. The fabric of reality was tearing itself apart. He knew what he had to do to stop the crisis. With a heavy heart, he looked back at his disciple and Frog as he instantly teleported to Sonic's and Tails' chase down, stopping the two. For years, these guys were friends. Some may even say brothers at one point. Tails indeed had done a horrible thing trapping Sonic, forcing him to deal with such pain, and Sonic always being careless, letting villains go. They were all doing this fighting for what? Because of betrayal, trust, arrogance, ego, nonsense really. They needed to stop. As Big gave his last request, floating up in the air where he opens his hands up, preparing to sacrifice himself to bring back stability. Silver, Sonic, Tails, Froggy, all of them began to scream out desperately. They didn't want this outcome. They didn't want Big to go. Goodbye, Froggy. take care of him for me. As immediately in a blinding light, all of the Sonics were gone, returning back to their timelines with Silkadoom gritting his teeth that his plans were ruined. Sonic de-transformed back to base. He didn't have it in him anymore, with Sonic and everyone else agreeing that Big, the wonderful oaf, just saved the world. Weeks later though, the funeral had just concluded as we cut to the last speaker of the occasion, Shadow, officially saying his last words and declaring that he would be changing his name to Big. Big, the ultimate life form. As we finally see everyone else disperse, with Silver prepping to return back to his future with Chris Thorndike. Sonic and Tails meet one last time, no longer holding any malice between each other, the cast going their own separate ways. As Sonic devotes himself to fishing, Amy would become irrelevant in the background, and Knuckles took Froggy back with him to Angel Island. Later on, Tails would sit alone in his broken house, realizing truly, maybe it was Big that was truly the strongest after all. As this, guys, is where I believe the factual, realistic tale of what if Sonic was betrayed and trapped into the special zone ends off. Dog, the amount of times I laughed recording this, man. This is officially the dumbest but most peak video I've ever made across both my channels. This whole scenario was based off a dumb conversation me and one of my friends had about Sonic being betrayed and trapped, and us looking at what ChatGPT would say about scenario. So I crashed down a Google document for fun, and hopefully I got one of you guys to at least chuckle a little bit. Well, that's all from me. Comment your thoughts. Hopefully I might actually be for real and go back to the Dark Sonic series, but we'll see through then. Let's see if ironically I end up getting a lot of growth from this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys next time though, hopefully.